How much do you get to keep?
It's a family concept. Just give it all to him.
He keeps everything?
I never see any money.
Okay.
Like if I ask for some money, he'll give me something like $5, $10. Something to get out of the vending machine for like...
He won't give you like $100?
He won't give me enough to run away with, basically.
Okay.
A bitch of mine shall not keep a dime. That's the pimp rules.
No
bitch shall keep a dime.
Human trafficking as it's defined by law, and you guys can read it here, but there's two things that we're specifically looking at from a federal perspective. The first one are the 3 pillars of force, fraud, and coercion. Those are the 3 things that we're looking for in any given investigation to say, okay, are there elements of the human trafficking, if you will? The next is with regard to juvenile sex trafficking, was there an awareness of the exploiter that the individual was under the age of 18? So there's 2 things that we have to prove in our investigations. If they're trafficking a child, first of all, did they know they were a child? Which sometimes is difficult. And we'll show you a specific case where this comes to point. But second to that is we don't have to prove that they knew the child was under the age of 18 if they cross state lines. So those are kind of some factors that we're looking for. So just to piggyback off what Ed had said, a lot of times we go back and forth with regard to our state, to our federal charges, and as well as oftentimes these investigations are also intermingled with child pornography. And case specific is if an individual or a pimp, if you will, takes pictures of a girl and she's 16 years old, he then takes erotic pictures of her for the websites to post online. He has now created child pornography and distributed child pornography, and if it's on his cell phone, he's now in possession of child pornography. Each of those charges carry 5, 10, and 10 years. So we're looking at presumably 20 years right there just for him doing that. Then we couple in and take a lot of the additional federal statutes into consideration.
And some of the different ways you'll see force used, and you can see it up there, of course, beating, slapping, torture. One of the pimps that we arrested, he would carry a torture kit with him. In that kit, he would have a razor blade, rubbing alcohol, and a whip. So when the girls got out of line, he would beat them, whip them, cut them, and then pour the rubbing alcohol on them as punishment. It could be something as simple as keeping the extra $10 from money that she got that she didn't turn in to the pimp. Some of the fraud you'll see, false promises, blackmail. This is something big that we're seeing here where these guys are going online, posing as other people, tricking young girls and boys, because boys do get involved with this, to say send nude pictures, and then they turn around and use those nude pictures to blackmail them to become trafficking victims or to produce more child pornography. Some of the coercion you'll see as well is the fear of law enforcement, climate of fear. There was a pimp we arrested. What he would do to keep his young girls in check was his main girl, which they refer to that as the bottom or bottom bitch, he raped her with a handgun in front of the 14-year-old and 15-year-old girl. So if that's supposed to be the girl that is trusted, when those 2 young ladies see that, and he says, if you run, I'll find you and I'll kill you, you think they believe him? Absolutely.
Domestic minor sex trafficking, as it's defined by our federal law. We went into this a little bit, but domestic and minor trafficking occurs when a U.S. citizen is engaged under the age of 18. So Commercial Sex Act is pretty much any sex act that's in exchange for money. So those are just some quick definitions as we move on. So a lot of times people really have a confusion with regard to, especially when we talk about traditional and or labor trafficking, if you will, the difference between trafficking and smuggling. So the two are not synonymous, but they can often sometimes lead into another. So what you have, and more specifically, is trafficking is exploitation-based, where smuggling is transportation-based. So pretty much what you have, a smuggler is a crime against the border, and exploitation is a crime against an individual, if you will. So oftentimes one can lead to another, where you may have a situation where an individual is smuggled from another area into this particular area, and then is bonded or held against their will, coerced, or you have any of those three factors that we previously talked about. But smuggling onto its own is not trafficking. It can lead and segue into trafficking once you have one of those basic three pillars, but that in itself is a starting point, if you will. So, like I said here, those are smuggling, crimes against the border, and crimes against a person. Here's some examples of smuggling that we've seen over the years. An individual who was sitting, he actually was in the armchair.
He was the chair.
He was the chair.
In the car.
Those are individuals that were in a car. Here's a brief smuggling video.
ICE immigration officials are also over here. They are stunned. Inside, there was one toilet, no hot water, and feces everywhere. Houston police officers are calling this one of the largest stash houses they have ever seen. Police pull them out one by one. In all, 109 suspected illegal immigrants, including more than a dozen women, one of them pregnant, were also inside of the home, along with 2 kids, and we're told 500 chickens.
So the important things that we really want to cover here is obviously from a trafficking perspective and from a smuggling perspective, we look at things somewhat differently, but they need to and really have to be identified properly. As you look at this, I like to bring this clip up because it identifies something and it shows. As they're talking, they say it's a smuggling operation, but then toward the end they say, well, yeah, well, they were all being held against their will. Well, what did that just turn into? It's not smuggling. That's now human trafficking. So it's a completely different animal. So ultimately, as from a law enforcement perspective, and that's some of the things that we really want to get out there as we train people and interact with and conduct trainings throughout the country, is really to delve deep into the situations at hand. Because at a surface level, someone might look at this and just say, oh, it's trafficking, there's a bunch of people there, and they're illegal aliens, and this needs to happen. It's not the case. That oftentimes these people are being exploited, and they're going to continue to be exploited. It starts with just the money. They're probably then going to be farmed out to different areas, albeit work areas or what have you. And this is just the beginning. So that's one of the things that we really want to impart and put out there. Human trafficking indicators from an international perspective. We've gone over a lot of these, but the fear of depression, control. I think things here is where individuals can't hold their money, can't have their papers. Early on, when I first came into the Bureau, one of my first cases was an international human trafficking case, and it involved a group of individuals that were recruited out of the Ukraine and the Eastern Bloc of Europe, and they were promised jobs in restaurants and hotels. And when they came over here, their papers were taken from them, and they had to sit there. They had to actually work in strip clubs. So they were housed with one other person, and they were put in one of the apartments that were scattered throughout southeast Michigan. And with that, 6 days a week for approximately 12 to 14 hours, they did nothing but work in these strip clubs. And so they came home, and that was their every day. Sundays they had off, but they were guided by one of their exploiters, and they were taken to the grocery store and to the mall to buy things. All of their money, they were strip searched on a nightly basis before they were let into their house, and then they were watched, locked in, and that was it. One of the individuals that tried to leave was actually tied to a radiator that was in the basement and beaten. Another one that tried to leave, she tried to leave twice. Her car was, she actually got in a car, had a friend, that car was car bombed. So it shows that this is everywhere. This happens in some of the most affluent and nice areas within your own communities. It's right in front of us. So the signs are there, and you don't always see it. But if you do, it's the bruising. It's someone that looks away, that won't engage, that just is shy and doesn't want to bring any attention because they feel that attention is going to just bring more pain to them. First of all, it's the major events that we see for us, like the International Car Show that just came into town. With that, obviously a lot of individuals travel into the region because there's a lot of people. So does the sex trade industry. The pimps will bring They're individuals there, and that's what happens. So it kind of follows with that. So major events is usually a big one. Anything that coincides with that. The hotels, obviously, that's their centrifuge and where their operations typically take place. So that's where you'll see things. Restaurants that are near hotels, gas stations along the way, truck stops, different things like that. That's where you usually encounter people that are kind of convoying on their way from event to event, if you will. It's a series of things. I don't think there's any one specific. In this particular situation, they took their papers and said, okay, we're going to keep them for safekeeping. There was a trust bond in the beginning that they developed a relationship. We don't want you to lose these. These are important here in America. You don't understand the rules, laws, everything that's going on. We do. We're going to help you navigate those. So we're going to hold on to these papers for a while. We're going to give them right back, but that's what. So you couple that with they don't understand our law enforcement system. As things start to go awry, they say, okay, we're gonna tell the cops, and they think the cops are like the cops back home, which hopefully we're not like that. So oftentimes that's what's impressed into their mind, and that's what they draw upon. So that we also see a lot of, from an international perspective, the shaming that goes back to the villages or hometowns that they're from. That we're going to send these pictures, these advertisements, we're going to put this information out there that you're doing this stuff to your family back home to shame you and to shame them. So I think you have a lot of those that are happening simultaneously and or at different times throughout the exploitation process.
How official are the paperwork to begin with?
It's all their paperwork. That's their passports, their birth certificates, everything they own. So it got them into the country, their visa. So it's what's keeping them here. So when they have control of that, they have control of them.
I think also something with our international victims to keep in mind, if you're at a place, if you work at a hospital, a law enforcement, that person that's there with them translating for you could be the exploiter. So we always recommend use your own translators that you trust because you never know. They're not going to disclose to you or ask for help if the exploiter is right there with them. This just sort of breaks down a little bit of the pay scale when you look at the pimp control, the Asian massage parlors, or your brothels. We actually sit down and do the math. A low trap or quota, because these girls have quotas to work every day, a low one of $500. That one girl or boy has made that pimp $182,000. So if they've got 5, 6, 7, 8 girls, you can understand why sex trafficking has become the second fastest growing criminal enterprise, only second to drugs. They have your basic family structure in terms of the pimp, the bottom, and then the other girls that are most trusted with that group. There's different turning out processes that they will do. It could be the finesse pimping, where they try to play that boyfriend role, try to make that girl fall in love with them, and then they switch it on them, and then have them have sex with guys, and of course the money goes to the pimp. Your bait and switch, while they might try to play off like they own a model agency. And they'll lure these girls in, you know, get them, say, down in Miami, where they're away from home and family and friends, and then tell them, this is what I'm really about, and this is what you're going to do. If I kill you, no one knows where you're at, and it just goes on and on from there. And then you have your guerrilla pimping, which I talked about a little bit earlier, where it's just that violent pimp that will actually snatch girls. We've had pimps that will answer prostitution ads online, pose as a customer, get to the hotel, and snatch the girl and take her and make her work for him.